Hello again, whiskey friends. Thanks for joining everybody for another whiskey review. And today we get to talk about a bourbon that I am quite excited to talk about. I was very nervous when I purchased this from the distillery at Jim Beam. It cost $210, but I do not regret this decision whatsoever. What I picked up on a recent trip on the Bourbon Trail was the Legent Yamazaki. So this is essentially a barrel proof with the extra finishing in the Yamazaki cask of the Legent that came out a few years ago. But I'm going to talk about why this particular one is a very special release to have on your radar. Oh my gosh, it is delicious. So thank you for joining me today, whiskey friends. Let's kick off the show. All right. Yeah, it should be good right there. I'm going to give it fancy glass treatment for today's review. Oh, yeah. So, what we have here, now that I pull out the bottle, I mean, this is a gorgeous bottle here. Very similar to the other Legent, but man, you get the gold in there, you get more of these details going on. So, this is the Legent Yamazaki cast finish. This one is finished in wine barrels, sherry, and then ex Yamazaki casks. Ooh, we're going to get to that. It is also 114 proof. So, a lot higher proof than that standard release. And, ultimately, this does fulfill what was the promise of that initial release, where it was to take the American whiskey, take the blending sensibilities that they're doing in Japan, bring them all together. And I really, really liked the regular Legent release. The price somewhere between $30 to $40. I thought it was a very, very good Kentucky finished whiskey, but it just came off as a Kentucky finished whiskey. Didn't understand the whole Japan influence and blending it with Japan sensibilities and what was going into the story. It just didn't seem to entirely emerge from that release. So with this one, though, I think the promise is finally fulfilled, especially because of those ex Yamazaki casts. I think they do a lot of heavy lifting on the finish, but we'll get into that in just a moment. So this was $210. I got it at the distillery. I think it's a distillery release only. So keep that in mind as we go through it. The other bottle they had at the distillery right above it was a Legends, which was a 15-year Jim Beam blend. I ended up passing on that one. We had a Knob Creek 15 single barrel from 2019 to open on this trip. It just didn't seem to have the uniqueness, let's say, of what was going on in this particular bottle. Though, man, I had some trepidation buying this thing. $210 is a big commitment. But I am happy I did. This thing packs a whole lot of good flavor. I think it's pretty impressive. The other thing that was really fun, if you were catching us on a recent live, uh, our friend Bill actually gave this to us in a blind, essentially the week after we bought it. And man, we were even talking about it pre-stream, and he kept a straight face the whole time, knowing that he was ending the blind on it. And it impressed me so much during that blind, confused the heck out of me. Thought it was Jim Beam 100% to the start. Then the honey comes in, all these other flavors came in because of all the finishing. Threw me off. I ended up calling it MGP by the end. Oh man, really, really threw me off blind, but I enjoyed every single second of it, just like I'm enjoying every single second of this particular tasting. So thank you for joining me today, whiskey friends. Let's get into the tasting notes. Cheers, everybody. Oh, geez. Gosh darn this nose. The underlying Jim Beam is like definitely there from a bourbon standpoint. Just those peanut shells emerges. There's this deep vanilla cream, bit of pepper. So it's like the bourbon part of it is undeniably there. But then, whew, from there, there's just that rush from the wine. The wine and the sherry takes over. It just blankets everything with this blast of berries, raspberries, strawberries, gosh darn, blueberries. I mean, it's all of those things Oh, and it's so sweet too. It's like all those berries are glazed and sprinkled with powdered sugar. A bit of tart custard there as well. So I start defining kind of a dessert as I'm going through it, as you can tell. Oh man. The you could pick this apart all day. The Yamazaki casks are the ones that really threw me off, especially when I was doing it blind. Um, because it really ties everything together with this honey and graham cracker. Um, it just fills in all the gaps. It's actually the part of it that I really really appreciate in this particular blend. Once again, it fulfills that promise of what like the original sounded like it was going to be on paper. It's happening in this glass. Oh, geez. So I could sit with this nose for quite a bit, but let's get into the taste. Cheers, everybody. Mm, man, so good. So immediately, that honey is really what takes over initially. Oh, it's so rich and oily, just like you'd imagine a honey being. Even get notes of almost a brie. So if you've ever taken some brie and poured some honey on it, it's almost that level of creaminess and um, depth in there that's just like taking over the whole palate, especially up front. The berries really come through as well, particularly from that wine finishing. I mean, the finishing on this is doing a whole lot of legwork. I mean, it even takes you a little bit to try to find the whiskey in it versus the fortified wine nature of this thing, because the finishing in it is just doing so much. Mid palate, though, I will say that's finally when the Jim Beam gets to emerge, gets to show its presence. That peanut butter comes through, the vanilla cream comes through, peanut shells, rich butterscotch. But ultimately, towards the finish, the wine starts taking over again, and you get this immense rush of those berries and the honey yet again. Let's get into the finish. Mm. Oh man, I really think those Yamazaki casts are doing a lot of heavy lifting towards the finish. Oh, that dark honey is just the best thing on the finish on this one, and I know those notes have to be coming from the Yamazaki. It's the notes I get from the Yamazaki 12. It's just this honey and the malt, and it just dances with the berries of the wine. I mean, that's the thing that I really, really enjoy about this blend. I mean, you can just feel the blend dancing. And once again, the finish is like it's not even a bourbon. It's like a fortified wine experience versus a bourbon experience. Like when you're going to be ordering a dessert wine after a fancy steak dinner, it kind of offers that. So interesting. Oh, geez. Every sip. There is a on the finish a bit of oak and darkness that really does round it out. I don't think I talked about oak at all throughout this entire experience. Where you do feel it is on the back end. I'm not sure about the age on these particular casks that were used in the blend. I tried looking it up, but I wasn't finding any definitive answers on that one. But the oak does show up on the finish, and that really does balance everything out when you think about all the honey I was describing the entire time. Oh gosh, that nose though. Oh, well, let's get into the scores. You can tell it's going to be high as I continue to gush. So here on the channel, we do separate things into a three-tier scoring system. There are a whole bunch of metrics behind the scenes here. Ultimately, it can get summarized into a flavor score, an experience score, and a value score. Flavor is just how delicious it is each step of the way. Experience is more of a technical score when it comes to the mouth feel, the depth of the flavors, the length of the finish, and then value, that price paid. So when it came to the flavor and it came to the experience, man, it got 90% of the possible scores. I mean, you hear me gushing over this thing just about each step of the way. Oh, it is really, really good. Now, it was $210. That's the part that's just going to be the judgment call for everybody's, own situations at the time that they're at the distillery there. But 210 is a lot. If this was, say, 150, 160, I'd probably given it 100 rather than the 80, which would have bumped it up into the 90s. Made a little bit of a difference. But as it stands, 89 out of 100. This is probably going to be in my top 10 for the year. I love it that much. It is an excellent pour. Now, would I recommend this? I said 8 out of 10. That just comes down to price. $210 is a lot to put down on a whiskey, but if you are somebody who would spend that on a whiskey and are looking for this type of experience that I'm describing, I don't think you'll be let down. This is a very, very delicious pour, so that's who I will be recommending it to. Do I plan to buy another? I mean, I don't know when I'm going to be down there again to buy another, but if I had a chance, I think I would definitely buy another. This is really, really good stuff. Like, this is going to be one of my favorite pours of the year, and it's ultimately the fulfillment of the promise of the original Legent. Just a barrel proof with those Yamazaki casks. Those Yamazaki casks really do fill it in with all those honey flavors. All right, I'm going to do one more sip, and then I'll sign off. Gosh, that's ridiculously good. Such a good pour. So if you are at Jim Beam, don't have a hesitation like I did. Thank you for joining me today, whiskey friends. We'll catch you on the next whiskey review. Goodbye, everybody.
Jeff, just be friends with me. But you have these whiskey friends, and you say hello again. Oh, Jeffrey, you should just be friends with me. But you have these whiskey friends, and you say hello again. Oh, Jeffrey, you should just be friends with me. But you have these whiskey friends.